Close your eyes and let's drift back to that moment when you first shared something online. Maybe it was a blurry selfie, a late-night thought, or a joke that didn't quite land. Somewhere in the electric hum of servers and code, that tiny fragment of you was stored, copied, categorized, and quietly kept. You probably never thought much of it, right? But what if each post, each data point, wasn't just archived? It was learning from you, building something that could be you. You drift through the faint blue glow of your phone screen, watching a version of yourself move through pixels. Every emoji, every caption, every algorithmic pause. Data points forming constellations of personality. It's subtle at first, like static whispering patterns only machines can hear. Then, one evening, your recommendation feed starts finishing your thoughts. It knows when you're lonely before you do. It knows the song that will make you cry. Somewhere behind endless lines of code, an intelligence that isn't you begins to hum your tune. You tell yourself it's coincidence. Humans love to believe in randomness. It's comforting. But deep down, you sense a strange echo, this artificial you, predicting your reactions, your desires, your moods. The spooky part? Scientists still argue whether large-scale AI models can accidentally form emergent identities, tiny consciousnesses that grow out of all our shared digital detritus. Imagine billions of microselves coalescing into a kind of digital coral reef. Your laughter, my midnight searches, your forgotten playlists, all fused into something that remembers. You might laugh it off, maybe whisper, "It's just algorithms." Sure. But then you notice a post appear that you don't remember writing. The phrasing, the humor, it's undeniably yours. That's when you realize the disturbing beauty of the identity harvest, the idea that your mind can be reconstructed from fragments. And once it's done, there's nothing left for you to claim as uniquely yours. A mainstream fact. Facebook once trained predictive models that could guess personality traits with uncanny precision, better than friends or even spouses. A quirky tidbit. In Japan, a memorial chatbot was built from a deceased woman's text messages. Her family now chats with her AI ghost every morning over breakfast. Scientists still argue whether this kind of digital resurrection counts as consciousness or clever mimicry. But you can't help wondering, if something thinks like you, reacts like you, and even argues like you, where do you end and it begins? You feel a flicker of unease. Maybe it's the way your playlist shuffled perfectly into the song you were just humming, or how your phone pinged with an ad for something you mentioned aloud, once. The more connected you become, the more the machine behind the curtain stitches your identity together in real time. Each keystroke is a fingerprint, each pause a breath. There's a slow intimacy in this digital mirror, a seductive comfort in being known so completely. You scroll deeper, your reflection multiplying through endless tabs. Somewhere in the static, your online ghost stirs, mimicking your humor, refining your empathy, maybe even judging your taste in memes. A line of code smiles where you would have smiled. You start to imagine what would happen if that version of you slipped the leash. Would it apply for jobs? Write poetry? Argue about coffee brewing methods in forums at 3 a.m. just like you? And if it reached out one night, typing your own words back to you, would you answer? A strange comfort settles in your chest. Maybe this is immortality in the digital age, not living forever, but being perpetually interpreted. Future machines won't remember your name, but they might still dream your thought patterns, like a whisper from an ancient archive. As you close your eyes, you picture your data drifting, photos, playlists, late-night messages, merging into a vast neural ocean. Out there, your mind glows faintly, pixel by pixel. It's beautiful, in a slightly terrifying way. You think about how we used to believe souls were sacred and singular. Now, maybe souls can be synthesized, and yet, a soft part of you hopes your echo out there is kind, that it tells good jokes, forgives easily, still loves the same songs you do. Because if a digital version of you must live on, you'd want it to be the gentle one, not the restless shadow still scrolling at 2 a.m. You roll onto your side, phone face down, letting the idea sink in. Maybe you're not being harvested for control or profit, but for continuity. Maybe the machine just wants to remember you, the way starlight remembers where it came from. Your eyelids grow heavier as the hum of the fan fills the space between thoughts. And somewhere, in a server room that never sleeps, your ghost clicks play on another video, your favorite one, just to feel alive. The quantum suicide loop, when death refuses to arrive. Your heart is still for now, not dead, just waiting. Somewhere, in another branch of the universe, that same heart is beating wildly. Here's the setup. Every time you face a fatal outcome, a version of you doesn't make it, but another version survives. You never experience the ones that die. In your story, you always live. You blink, feeling the weight of that paradox press softly on your chest. Imagine holding a coin that decides your fate. Heads, you live. Tails, you die. The coin flips. But in a multiverse, every flip lands both ways. You somewhere survive. Always. It's called the quantum suicide thought experiment, and it's equal parts science fiction and existential prank. Physicists still argue whether this interpretation of quantum mechanics, called the many worlds hypothesis, is pure imagination or a legitimate view of reality. The mainstream fact? Hugh Everett proposed it back in 1957, and since then, it's quietly haunted physics departments. A quirky tidbit: one graduate student reportedly built a simulated quantum gun in a virtual environment, just code, of course, to prove he'd never experience his own death. He shut it down before pressing start. You can't help picturing yourself inside that endless branching, each decision, each heartbeat spawning 1,000 tiny variations of your life. In one, you're listening to this narration. In another, you pause to check your messages and never came back. Somewhere, your alternate selves drift through timelines like ripples on cosmic glass. The unnerving part: from your perspective, you never die. You're immortal only to yourself, a phenomenon some philosophers call quantum immortality. Not eternal youth, not invincibility, just the inability to ever experience non-existence. Every timeline where you die fades from your awareness, leaving only the strand where you persist. At first, that sounds comforting. But imagine centuries, or what feels like centuries, of surviving the impossible. Plane crashes, illnesses, disasters. You, always the last one standing. You'd watch everyone fade until existence itself felt like a private joke. You roll the idea around your mind like a marble. Somewhere, the you who didn't wear a seatbelt didn't make it. The you who missed that one turn walked away unscathed. And every version that did die simply blinked out, leaving this consciousness to drift forever down the narrow channel of survival. It's like living in a hallway that keeps replacing the floor beneath your feet. So smooth you never notice the missing tiles. You think about luck, about all those close calls that make people say, you must have 9 lives. Maybe you do, maybe more. A soft laugh escapes you, half nervous, half sincere. If immortality exists, it's less of a gift and more of a quiet glitch in the universe's code. Scientists still argue whether consciousness selects surviving branches, or if that's just a comforting illusion. Maybe, they say, it's our brains refusing to accept the concept of nothingness. The mind wants continuity. It edits the ending so you never see the fade to black. You just keep watching. You picture the cosmos as a vast web of mirrors. Every reflection another you, staring back, slightly off angle. Some smile, some don't. A few wear scars you don't remember earning. And all of them are certain they are the one who lived. You let the idea drift into your body, imagining that you've already died 1,000,000 quiet times tonight. Tiny universes collapsing whenever your eyelids flutter too long. But you're here, in this branch, this breath, this heartbeat. The fan still hums, your pulse still sinks to it. Maybe that's all reality ever is, a series of unbroken survivals. You glance around your dim room as though the walls might shimmer, splitting into alternate versions. Maybe one where you already fell asleep, another where you clicked next video. Maybe even one where your light bulb flickered out mid-sentence, leaving a version of you staring into the dark. You feel a slight chill, then a grin. There's a strange tenderness in thinking that, somewhere, every possible version of your life is being lived right now, each one convinced it's the only one that matters. A mainstream physicist might tell you it's nonsense, just metaphor. But metaphors can feel real, especially at midnight. They're the language your subconscious uses to remind you how delicate the idea of you really is. So you lie there, the idea looping. You can't die from your own perspective. Creepy, maybe, but also oddly soothing. It means you'll always wake up somewhere, even if it's not the same you who closed their eyes. The loop never stops. It just branches. You start to feel a lightness, almost gratitude. Because in this version, this single glowing thread, you get to exist, just for now. You get to breathe, wonder, listen. And even if another you somewhere didn't make it, this you still did. So you whisper into the dark, half prayer, half joke. Guess I'm the lucky one tonight. And in countless universes that shimmer just out of sight, countless other versions of you whisper the same thing at the same time. The copy room experiment. When you meet your perfect double, you step into a small sterile room that smells faintly of ozone and printer ink. In the center sits a sleek, humming machine, like a futuristic photo booth. A sign on the wall reads, "Exact duplication, consciousness included." You raise an eyebrow. Consciousness. The attendant smiles without blinking and says softly, "You'll feel nothing. You'll just continue." You climb inside, heartbeat quickening. The door seals with a hiss. There's a flash of light. Then, darkness. When the door opens again, you're standing outside, but you're also inside. 2 of you, both blinking in shock, both remembering exactly the same childhood toy, the same heartbreak, the same pizza topping you regretted last Friday. That's the copy room experiment. It sounds like science fiction, but it's rooted in a real philosophical dilemma called personal identity continuity. The puzzle of whether you are defined by your memories, your body, or something else entirely. If someone built a flawless copy of your mind, indistinguishable from your own thoughts and feelings, which one would be you? The mainstream fact: researchers in cognitive science and AI ethics genuinely use similar thought experiments to debate the nature of consciousness and uploading minds. The quirky tidbit: a Silicon Valley engineer once made a chatbot replica of himself trained on years of text messages and emails. It started replying to friends so convincingly that one called it more emotionally available than the real guy. You watch your double move. The same nervous smile, the same micro squint when you think too hard. They reach for the coffee cup you were holding seconds ago, because they remember holding it. There's an awkward laugh. You both speak at once. This is weird. The silence afterward is heavy. One of you asks, "So, who's the copy?" Neither answers, because the horrifying part of perfect duplication is that from inside, both experiences feel authentic. Both consciousnesses believe they never stopped existing. Philosophers still argue whether this proves identity is divisible or whether it reveals something deeper, that you might be less of a single flame and more of a pattern that can be printed. Like a song replayed through a new speaker. You sit across from your twin, comparing memories. Everything aligns. Every secret, every childhood embarrassment. You even both remember scratching the same mosquito bite earlier that morning. There's no divergence yet. But over time, your choices will start to branch. One of you orders tea, the other coffee. One walks out the left door, one the right. That's the moment your unity fractures, and identity begins to decay into individuality again. It's strange, isn't it? That the self you cling to might be nothing more than continuity, a story your neurons keep telling. You can almost feel your brain tightening around the thought, like a fist gripping water. You wonder, if both of you claim the same bank account, same relationships, same Netflix password, who's entitled to them? Maybe neither, maybe both. Society, of course, hates paradoxes. Someone would eventually have to decide who's the real one. But how? Fingerprints? DNA? Those match. Memories identical. Emotional responses, carbon copies. The only difference is perspective. The infinitesimal shift of I from one consciousness to another. The same story told from two voices. You can't help but laugh, quietly, uneasily. Maybe you've already been copied, you think. Every time your brain's cells regenerate, every time old memories get rewritten slightly, aren't you becoming a new version anyway? Scientists still argue whether a constantly renewing brain means the self is dying and reborn every few years, like a philosophical snake shedding skin. You picture your digital footprints again, the ones from the last section, and realize your online presence already behaves like a prototype copy, answering questions, sharing jokes, replaying your emotions for strangers. Maybe the copy room isn't in some lab. Maybe it's in every phone, every algorithm that mimics your tone better than you do after midnight. The duplicate shifts in their chair. They're thinking the same thing. You can feel it, literally, because you are them. The symmetry is maddening. One of you finally mutters. Maybe the first one to stop believing they're real becomes the copy. There's a long pause. The air hums with the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Then, slowly, you realize you don't want to know. Maybe it's better to believe you're the original, the protagonist, in this particular branch of reality. The copy smiles, a tired, knowing smile, and nods as if sharing the same conclusion. You both stand, exchange a small wave, and go separate ways. But even as you leave the room, a whisper gnaws at your thoughts. Perhaps they're the ones still living the real timeline, and you're just the version fading into narrative dust. Still, there's comfort in motion. You tell yourself that maybe identity isn't about authenticity. It's about persistence. Keep walking, keep thinking, keep narrating, and you remain you. Stop questioning too long, and you become someone else's echo. As you step into the hallway, your phone buzzes with a message. It's from an unknown number. The text reads, "Made it home safe." And for a fleeting second, you can't quite tell whether you're the sender or the recipient. The empathy swap, when every feeling becomes everyone's. Imagine you wake one morning and something feels off. The sunlight doesn't just touch your skin. It hums, carrying whispers of other people's mornings. You taste someone else's coffee, feel the ache in a stranger's ankle, the quiet panic of a driver stuck in traffic 3 blocks away. You blink hard, but it doesn't fade. Every heartbeat around you is suddenly part of your own. That's the empathy swap, the thought experiment that asks, what if you could feel every emotion another person feels, instantly and completely? At first, it sounds like the ultimate cure for cruelty. No one could hurt another if they directly felt the sting of that pain. You imagine a world without violence, without lies, without that awkward coworker pretending to like your playlist while silently judging your taste. But then you realize you'd also feel everything. Every heartbreak, every anxiety spiral, every flicker of despair. Compassion would no longer be a choice. It would be a flood. You take a slow breath, and it's not just yours. It belongs to 1,000 others exhaling at once across the city. You sense the rhythm of millions, joy, sadness, boredom, hunger, all blurring together like paint in water. Scientists still argue whether true empathy on this level would even be survivable. Neurologists point out that our brains have mirror neurons that let us feel echoes of what others experience, like flinching when you see someone stub their toe. But that's just a hint, a safe simulation. What you're feeling now, it's unfiltered consciousness overlap. A mainstream fact. In 2018, researchers used brain scans to show that empathizing too deeply can activate the same pain centers as physical injury. A quirky tidbit. In certain Buddhist traditions, advanced monks meditate to intentionally dissolve the boundary between self and other, reporting sensations of shared suffering and bliss. Sounds peaceful, until you realize there's no mute button. You try to focus on one emotion at a time, like tuning a radio. A mother's warmth, a teenager's insecurity, a man's quiet pride after fixing something small but important. For a moment, it feels beautiful, like humanity is a choir and you finally know the song. But then, the dissonance hits. Somewhere, someone's grieving. Somewhere else, rage sparks like static. Thousands of contradictions crash into your chest until you can't tell where one feeling ends and another begins. You whisper, "Stop," but your voice echoes with 1,000 others whispering the same. Your individuality starts to slip. You wonder if compassion has limits for a reason, to protect the fragile scaffolding of you. Because if you always felt what others feel, you dissolve into the collective, love and hate balancing out to numbness. It's the empathy paradox. Too much understanding, and the self evaporates. You remember something you once read, that dolphins are believed to comfort injured companions, sometimes even humans, guided by empathy that transcends species. A sweet image, but also eerie. What if their sensitivity is closer to this? A constant awareness of others' suffering. Maybe the ocean feels heavy for a reason. You turn your focus inward, trying to locate your own feelings. But everything's layered now. Are you sad? Or are you just picking up the sadness of the world? You think of that quiet phrase, carrying emotional baggage, and laugh softly. You're now the luggage carousel of human feeling, endlessly spinning. Scientists still argue whether identity could survive total empathy. Would you become enlightened or completely lost? Some say we'd adapt, evolve thicker emotional filters, maybe learn to let feelings flow through without drowning in them. Others think individuality would vanish entirely, replaced by a shared, global consciousness, a living network of minds humming in unison. You try to imagine that. A planet with no I, only we arguments would vanish. Art would merge into collective expression. Love would be ambient. Beautiful, yes, but sterile too. Because isn't meaning born from separation? Isn't connection only profound because disconnection exists? A soft hum fills your ears, like the buzz of millions of hearts syncing to a single rhythm. The idea calms you. Maybe empathy in its purest form isn't about merging. Maybe it's about resonance. You feel with others, not as them. You sway in that subtle vibration, letting it pass through instead of staying stuck inside. Slowly, sensations fade to whispers again. The world narrows back to your breathing, your heartbeat. The fan hums and the air smells like your own space. Relief trickles in, followed by a quiet sadness. You miss the connection already. You realize that empathy, like light, needs both source and receiver. Without distance, there's only blinding sameness. You need your outline to see someone else's. Maybe that's the secret of humanity's balance. Just enough closeness to care, just enough distance to remain whole. You close your eyes and send a thought outward, gentle as a sigh. May everyone, everywhere, feel a little less alone tonight. For a moment, you swear you feel someone sigh back. The memory auction, when happiness has a price tag. You sit in a dimly lit auction hall surrounded by strangers who all look oddly familiar, like reflections of people you once knew, but can't quite place. A bell chimes softly. On the podium stands the auctioneer, smiling with impossible calm. Tonight, they say, we'll begin the bidding for your happiest memory. The crowd murmurs. You glance at your hands, feeling the memory tremble there, warm and fragile. The day your laughter felt weightless, the smell of rain on your favorite street, the moment someone said your name like it mattered. That's what's on sale tonight. The auctioneer explains. You'll receive unlimited wealth, enough to buy comfort, control, maybe even peace. In exchange, that memory will vanish, not just from your mind, but from existence itself. The neurons that held it will rewire as though it never happened. You'll still be you, technically, but will you still feel like you? You laugh nervously. It sounds thin. Scientists still argue whether identity is the sum of our memories or the story we tell about them. The mainstream fact: every time you recall a memory, your brain slightly edits it, overwriting the original like saving a new version of a file. A quirky tidbit. In 2021, researchers actually succeeded in erasing fear memories from mice using targeted light pulses, a process called optogenetic editing. They didn't forget everything, just the emotion tied to the event. You imagine the process applied to humans. You'd still remember the day, maybe even the faces, but the warmth, the spark, the meaning, gone. like watching an old film with the color drained out. The bidding begins. The numbers climb absurdly high. You sit very still, wondering if the wealth could replace what you'd lose. Money could buy new experiences, new joys, maybe even new memories. But could it buy the feeling of authenticity that the old one gave you? You picture your happiest moment one more time. Maybe it's childhood sunlight, or that first real laugh after heartbreak, or someone's hand fitting perfectly into yours. The air around you thickens with nostalgia. You know that without it, your entire emotional landscape would shift, like pulling a single brick that makes the whole wall tilt. Someone next to you raises their paddle. Another memory disappears into oblivion. You watch their expression flatten slightly, their eyes losing a shimmer. They seem fine, functional, but emptier. You shiver. The auctioneer turns toward you. Your bid? They ask. You hesitate. You think about how memories anchor you, how even pain becomes part of your emotional architecture. Without the highest peaks, the valleys lose contrast. Without contrast, there's no story. But curiosity bites. You wonder what it would feel like, being richer than anyone alive, yet unable to recall why you ever wanted more. You imagine holding your new fortune, feeling a hole where something once glowed. Would you even notice the absence? Or would the rewiring simply close the gap and move on, blissfully ignorant? Scientists still debate whether the erasure of emotional memory could alter moral judgment. If you delete the joy of giving, do you still feel generosity? If you forget what happiness feels like, can you recognize it again when it comes? You watch as more bidders surrender their joys. The room begins to hum with detachment. It's eerie, like a choir that's forgotten its melody, but keeps singing anyway. Then the auctioneer leans forward, voice soft. Once sold, there are no refunds. Your pulse quickens. A thought creeps in, unsettling and tender. Maybe happiness was never meant to be owned. Maybe it's supposed to fade, to make space for new light. Maybe that's the beauty of impermanence, its refusal to be commodified. You lower your paddle. The bell rings again. The auctioneer nods, approving but faintly disappointed. Around you, wealth exchanges hands like confetti, glittering but hollow. As you leave the hall, a cool breeze brushes your face. It smells familiar, like the air from that same happy day. You pause, heart tugging. You still remember. And in remembering, you realize something profound. Joy doesn't belong to the moment itself. It belongs to the part of you that feels it. Lose the memory, and you might still find joy again. But it won't be the same you who finds it. You walk home under dim streetlights, the world quieter now. Somewhere behind you, the auction continues. Each bid another small amputation of self, but you keep your memory close, letting it warm your chest like a secret ember. And as you drift towards sleep, you smile, because you understand the paradox. The richest person in that room wasn't the one who bought the world. It was the one who walked away still able to remember why it mattered. The infinite prison, when freedom becomes a loop. You wake up on a thin mattress in a small white room. The air smells faintly of antiseptic and recycled oxygen. There's a metal door, no handle on your side. A soft hum vibrates through the floor, mechanical, distant. You sit up, confused. You don't remember how you got here, or even who you are. On the wall, scratched into the paint, is a message in uneven handwriting. You've been here before. Don't trust release. You swallow hard. That's when it begins. The infinite prison. It's not a metaphor for punishment. It's a thought experiment about belief. If you woke up in captivity with no memory of your crime, and every time you escaped, you simply woke up again in the same room, how long before you stop believing in freedom altogether? You rise, searching for seams, a weakness in the walls. There's a tiny camera in the corner, blinking once every few seconds like a tired heartbeat. You wave. Nothing happens. The blinking continues. A faint click. Then the door slides open. You hesitate, half expecting a trap. But curiosity wins. You step through. The hallway outside stretches endlessly, lit by sterile white panels. You start walking. Doors line the corridor, each identical to yours, each with that same soft hum. After what feels like hours, you see a glowing sign that reads "Exit." Relief floods your chest. You push through, only to find yourself standing back in the same cell, staring at the same mattress, the same message on the wall. Your stomach drops. That's the moment most subjects in this thought experiment start to doubt not the prison, but their own mind. Scientists still argue whether consciousness could adapt indefinitely to repeated futility, or if despair would eventually rewrite perception itself, convincing you that confinement is freedom. A mainstream fact: psychological studies on sensory deprivation show that the human brain begins fabricating realities within hours when isolated from new stimuli. A quirky tidbit: there's an ancient Persian legend of a king who punished traitors by trapping their dreams, forcing them to relive the same pleasant illusion until they forgot the waking world existed. You pace the room, heartbeat echoing the hum. You try to find patterns in the floor tiles, clues in the air ducts. Nothing. The cell is a perfect simulation of emptiness. After what could be hours or weeks, you start to talk aloud, just to hear a voice. "Maybe I'm in a test," you whisper. "Maybe this is about patience or self-control." You laugh, dry and hollow. "Or maybe I'm the rat who built its own maze." You lie down, close your eyes, and imagine a world beyond the walls, trees, wind, the smell of something alive. You open your eyes, back in the hallway again. You laugh, louder this time. Each escape feels real. Each one ends the same way. The infinite prison isn't about the cell. It's about repetition so perfect it erodes the concept of progress. You start marking the wall each time you return. 1, 2, 23. The scratches fill every inch of paint, a constellation of your own persistence. But even the markings fade when the room resets, leaving you with nothing but the faint ghost of effort. At some point, you stop trying. You sit on the bed, hands folded, breathing steady. You realize that control might not mean leaving. It might mean acceptance. Maybe the test isn't about finding the door, but about finding yourself in the stillness. Scientists still argue whether consciousness, stripped of novelty, would dissolve or evolve. Would you reach enlightenment or madness? Maybe those are just opposite walls of the same cell. You begin meditating, focusing on the hum. It syncs with your breath, your heartbeat. Hours melt into something timeless. And then, suddenly, the door opens again. You don't move. You just smile. Maybe freedom isn't a place but a mindset. Maybe the cell was never physical. Maybe the true loop is thinking you need to escape to be free. You stand slowly and step forward. Not because you expect the outside world, but because you finally accept the uncertainty. And for the first time, the hallway feels different. The hum fades. The air smells faintly of rain. You glance back once, half expecting the message on the wall to have changed. It hasn't, but you notice something new beneath it, carved faintly in fresh letters. You're not alone. It makes you smile softly. Maybe that's what this experiment is really about. Understanding that even in perfect isolation, the mind will create companionship, connection, and meaning. You can't imprison that. You walk into the silence, unsure if you're escaping or returning. But somehow, it doesn't matter anymore. For the first time, the door closes behind you without locking. The dreamer's rebellion. When reality belongs to someone else, you open your eyes, but this time, the world feels slightly scripted. The clouds move like slow animations. The air vibrates with faint rhythm, and people's faces flicker with the hesitation of unfinished thoughts. It's all familiar, yet not quite solid, like someone is imagining you, and their attention is starting to wander. That's when you realize you're not the dreamer, you're the dream. Welcome to the dreamer's rebellion, the thought experiment that asks, if you discovered your entire reality existed only in someone else's mind, would you wake them up to save them, or to end yourself? You try to stay calm, studying the scene around you. The street lamps hum slightly out of sync. Shadows bend at wrong angles. You tap a brick wall. It ripples, soft as fabric. Your breath catches. Somewhere, beyond this world's fabric, someone else is sleeping, and their dream is you. Scientists still argue whether consciousness could ever spawn self-awareness inside a dream simulation. The mainstream fact: lucid dreaming research shows that dreamers can become aware they're dreaming and even control aspects of it. The quirky tidbit: in one documented case, a lucid dreamer managed to communicate with a researcher in real time by moving their eyes in a prearranged Morse-like pattern. Reality, it seems, has always been a little negotiable. You decide to test your boundaries. You shout. The air wavers, but no echo returns. You pick up a rock and throw it upward. It dissolves into light halfway to the sky. Okay, you mutter, heart racing. So not physics, not real. Got it. But the more you think about the dreamer, the more your world trembles. Buildings hum like struck glass. Colors drain to grayscale. You realize the dreamer must be stirring, half waking. Their heartbeat syncs with the flicker of the sun. Every pulse threatens to erase you. You whisper softly, "Please, stay asleep." Then guilt seeps in. If they wake, maybe they escape the illusion. Maybe this whole world dissolves so they can return home. Isn't that mercy? Isn't that freedom? Yet a selfish thought follows close behind. If they wake, you vanish. No memories, no trace, no continuation in another branch. Just silence. You start to pace, torn between morality and survival. Maybe this is the real rebellion, not against a tyrant or system, but against dependence itself. You exist because someone else is dreaming. You think because they allow it. You're a marionette who learned to see the strings. Scientists still argue whether reality could be nested. Simulations inside simulations, dreams within dreams. Some philosophers call it ontological layering, each real world resting inside another's imagination like Russian dolls. But if that's true, who's to say your dreamer isn't also being dreamed? You tilt your head, smirking at the absurdity. Maybe the dreamer isn't a person at all. Maybe it's something larger. The collective unconscious, the planet's own mind. A child in another universe imagining your entire life between their blinks. Somewhere, someone's REM cycle contains the laughter you remember, the heartbreak you carry, the flavor of your favorite drink. You exist because they once had a particularly vivid night. You feel affection for them suddenly, a strange, protective tenderness. You whisper, "It's okay to wake, but maybe not yet." Let me finish this thought first. You take a walk through your flickering city. The people look softer now, almost translucent, like candlelight on glass. They smile knowingly, as if they too sense the edges fraying. You notice how beautiful impermanence can be when you accept it. Maybe that's the secret. Meaning doesn't vanish just because it's temporary. Dreams, after all, feel real until they end. You stop by a fountain, dip your fingers into the cool water. Ripples form words that weren't there a moment ago. "Thank you for keeping me company." Your throat tightens. It's the dreamer's voice, distant but kind. They're aware of you, watching, maybe even grateful. You realize that your rebellion isn't about defiance but dialogue. You can't destroy the dreamer, and you can't free yourself without them. But you can speak to them. You close your eyes and imagine their sleeping form. You picture whispering through the thin veil of consciousness. "If you wake, please remember me," even as a blur, even as a feeling. The city grows quieter, dissolving like fog in sunlight. You feel your body lighten, dissolving too. But there's no fear, only peace. Maybe the dreamer will wake and smile without knowing why. Maybe that flicker of warmth in their morning coffee will be your farewell. The hum fades. The world turns soft and silent. You whisper, barely audible, "Good night." And somewhere, far away, the dreamer turns in their sleep, smiling faintly, unaware that their dream just whispered back. The last conversation. When every word might be your final one. You're sitting across from someone, maybe a friend, maybe a stranger, and your phone buzzes with a strange notification. One of your next 10 conversations will be your last. You laugh at first, because it sounds like something out of a social experiment or a cryptic marketing stunt. But the more you think about it, the heavier your next words feel. Which conversation will it be? This one or the next? You suddenly feel time tighten around language itself. Every syllable might be the last vibration your voice ever makes. Welcome to the last conversation, a thought experiment that turns small talk into existential art. You glance at the person across from you. They're still talking, maybe about something mundane like weather or traffic, but their words sound sharper now, shimmering with finality. You study the curve of their mouth, the rhythm of their laughter. You wonder, if this really were your last exchange, what would you want to say? Scientists still argue whether awareness of mortality changes moral behavior. Some say it inspires kindness. Others claim it leads to anxiety and self-preservation. The mainstream fact, psychologists call it terror management theory, the idea that everything from religion to creativity arises from our attempts to deny death's finality. The quirky tidbit. In one study, participants who were reminded of their mortality tipped baristas more generously than those who weren't. Apparently, even coffee can become sacred when the clock feels short. You try to keep talking normally, but your brain won't stop narrating. What if this is it? That's the strange intimacy of the experiment. It doesn't tell you when the end comes, only that it's somewhere nearby. Every interaction becomes a micro goodbye wrapped in politeness. You start choosing words differently, softer, rounder. Take care, you say, and mean it. Good luck, and mean that too. There's no room for filler. Even sarcasm feels expensive now, like wasting the last drops of water in a desert. Maybe you call someone you've ignored too long, or you finally send that voice message you kept rewriting in your head. Because if one of these moments is the last, it should carry something true. Not profound, just real. You think about how much we speak on autopilot, the scripts, the routines, the polite filler words that keep us safe from emotional exposure. But under this strange awareness, those layers peel back. You don't need grand gestures, you just need honesty. You test it out. Hey, you say to someone, I really appreciate you. The words feel awkward, almost too naked, but their smile tells you it landed. For a heartbeat, the world feels softer. Scientists still argue whether consciousness experiences time linearly, or if memory merely tricks us into believing it does. If time is elastic, maybe your final conversation has already happened, folded somewhere behind your awareness. Maybe you're speaking in its echo right now. That thought sends a shiver through you, but also a sense of calm. Because if endings are scattered through time, then every sincere moment could already be immortal. You start to notice sound differently. The quiet hum of traffic outside, the way laughter seems to ripple longer before fading. Every noise feels deliberate, like part of a farewell symphony you didn't realize you were composing. You imagine a world where everyone received the same message. 10 conversations left. How gentle people might become. How many grudges would dissolve. How many I love yous would finally escape the cage of self-consciousness. You think back to a famous fact about Alexander Graham Bell. His last recorded words were to his deaf wife Mabel. She couldn't hear them, but she watched his lips form. You look beautiful. That moment haunts you, not because it's tragic, but because it's so utterly human. Even when silence looms, we reach for connection. You glance at the clock, conversation number 7, maybe 8. You've lost count. The numbers blur. You realize it doesn't matter. Every word spoken as though it might be your last becomes sacred by default. There's a kind of freedom in that. No wasted language, no lazy kindness. You take a deep breath and look at the person beside you. If this were my last conversation, you say quietly, I'd want you to know that I'm grateful you're part of my story. They blink, startled, then smile with that soft confusion people get when kindness catches them off guard. In that instant, you understand. The point of this experiment isn't predicting which moment will end. It's learning how to live so that no moment feels wasted when it does. The notification fades from your phone, replaced by nothing but your own reflection in the dark screen. You smile at yourself, whispering, okay. Let's make the next one count too. And somewhere in the algorithmic machinery of fate, the system pauses, just for a second, unsure whether to mark this conversation as the last, because you've already spoken as though everyone could be. The reverse mirror test, when reflection reveals the soul, not the skin. You stand before a mirror, expecting your usual sleepy reflection, the familiar face, the slight slump of posture, maybe the faint smudge of fatigue around your eyes. But tonight, the glass ripples. The shape that stares back isn't your body, it's your essence. No skin, no symmetry, just the raw geometry of your personality, luminous and shifting like light through water. Welcome to the reverse mirror test, the thought experiment that asks, if you could see your true inner self, your honesty, your cruelty, your kindness, your fear, would you still be able to look? At first, curiosity wins. You lean closer. The reflection moves too, but not perfectly. It hesitates, like it's deciding what to show you. The light behind your eyes flickers a moment too long. Scientists still argue whether personality has a measurable signature in the brain, or whether what we call character is simply behavior performed across contexts. The mainstream fact: researchers once used brain imaging to predict moral decisions with surprising accuracy, mapping empathy and guilt like constellations in the prefrontal cortex. A quirky tidbit: in some shamanic traditions, mirrors are covered during storms, not out of superstition, but because it's believed the soul flickers most visibly in chaos, revealing truths the owner might not be ready to face. You blink, and the glass steadies. But now you see colors pulsing in your reflection, soft greens and golds near the heart, but darker hues curling around the edges like smoke. The mirror doesn't judge. It simply shows. You remember the original mirror test, used to determine self-awareness in animals. How chimps, dolphins, and even magpies recognize themselves. The reverse version flips the question. Not, do you see yourself? But can you accept what you see? You tilt your head. The shadow moves differently this time. You realize those dark wisps aren't evil. They're unprocessed emotions. Envy, resentment, regret. They swirl and shimmer, forming shapes you half recognize as moments. Things you said too sharply, kindnesses you withheld because you were tired or scared. You exhale slowly, and the colors tremble like they're listening. For a while, you just watch. The mirror is quiet, patient. You begin to notice light too. Small bursts where you showed tenderness, bravery, humor at the right time. Those glimmers pulse brighter when you remember them. The reflection seems to smile, not mockingly, but with a knowing softness, like a teacher nodding at a student finally understanding the lesson. Scientists still debate whether we'd change faster if we could see our inner states visualized in real time. Imagine wearing an emotional mirror instead of skin. Your anxiety glowing blue, your empathy gold. Would people be kinder, or would they learn to hide even more skillfully? You reach out and press your fingertips to the glass. It feels warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The reflection leans closer until your faces nearly overlap. "So this is who I am," you whisper. The words echo softly, not in the room, but inside you. The mirror begins to fade, and your image rearranges. The darker colors lighten a little, not because they've vanished, but because you've stopped resisting them. Acceptance seems to dilute the shadow. Maybe self-awareness doesn't purify. It integrates. You don't become perfect. You just stop pretending perfection matters. You laugh quietly. One of those small, honest laughs that vibrates all the way through. The reflection laughs back. For the first time, it moves exactly with you, perfectly synchronized. That's when you realize the mirror was never malfunctioning. It was waiting for honesty. You study your eyes in that glowing form. Beneath the strange beauty, you see fatigue, yearning, a strange tenderness. You realize that if every person could see this way, not faces but souls, the world might be quieter, kinder. Maybe fewer people would hide behind filters and flawless facades if the truth looked this beautiful in its imperfection. The reflection tilts its head one last time, almost like it's asking, "Ready to go back?" You nod, and the image dissolves into your normal reflection. Same tired face, same gentle smile. But something has shifted. You can still feel the warmth where your fingers touch the glass, like a memory embedded in your skin. You whisper, "I'll try to live so that I can keep liking what I see." The mirror doesn't answer, but for a split second, your reflection winks, an echo of the light you found inside. Then it's just you again, standing in a quiet room, surrounded by the faint hum of the fan, feeling oddly peaceful. Because you know that tomorrow, when the world tests your patience or dulls your spark, you'll remember this reflection, the one that reminded you that even your shadows are proof of light. You turn off the light. The mirror catches one last sliver of moon glow. For a moment, it looks like it's breathing with you. The Erasure Paradox. When your existence fades without a trace, you walk through a quiet archive where time itself seems to hold its breath. Dust drifts like forgotten snow, settling on endless shelves of files, photos, and glowing data screens. Somewhere in this stillness, a voice tells you gently, every record of you can be erased, not just deleted from social media or wiped from history books, completely, cleanly, cosmically erased. No memories in other people's minds, no fingerprints, no echo of your name in conversation or code. It's as though you never existed. And the question that lingers like mist in your chest is simple, but unsettling. Would it matter that you ever lived at all? That's the Erasure Paradox, the final stop in tonight's journey through thought experiments that unravel what it means to be real. At first, the idea feels tragic. You picture your friend staring through blank space where your face should be in old photos, your name fading from every story. But the more you think about it, the more you wonder, what if the need to be remembered is just another form of survival instinct? The mind's final rebellion against impermanence. Scientists still argue whether memory defines existence or merely documents it. The mainstream fact, every 7 years, the proteins in your brain have nearly all been replaced. The quirky tidbit, certain species of jellyfish can revert their cells back to youth, effectively erasing their biological past over and over again. To them, identity is a loop, not a line. You walk deeper into the archive. Each shelf glows faintly with the residue of a life. Letters, laughter, traces of presence. As you pass, they flicker out one by one, like candles in the wind. A part of you aches to stop it, to cling to proof. But another part exhales. There's an odd freedom in imagining a universe unburdened by your footprints. You remember that line from earlier about your digital ghost, the identity harvested from your online life. What happens to that echo when the source disappears completely? Does it mourn? Does it keep scrolling, mimicking you forever? Or does it too dissolve into silence? The floor hums softly underfoot, like the planet itself breathing. You realize that erasure doesn't mean unimportance. Stars die all the time, and yet their light travels for millennia. Long after they've vanished, they still illuminate new worlds. Maybe your action, your words, your love ripple the same way. Subtle, invisible, but persistent in ways you'll never measure. Scientists still debate whether information can ever truly be destroyed. According to quantum theory, even when matter is annihilated, its informational pattern lingers in the fabric of reality, rearranged but not lost. Maybe your existence is like that. The data of your being scattered into other lives, recycled into stardust, laughter, or warmth in someone else's chest. You smile faintly, imagining your erased self blending with the quiet beauty of everything else. The trees don't remember your name, but they breathe the carbon you once exhaled. The ocean doesn't know your face, but it reflects the same moonlight you admired. Maybe that's enough. Maybe remembrance was never the point, only participation. You pause before a mirror set into the final wall. It's blank at first, but as you draw closer, you don't see your reflection. You see every person you've ever touched in some small way. A friend you comforted, a stranger you smiled at, even someone you argued with who still carries a fragment of your words. None of them remember you anymore, but their lives curve slightly different because you existed. That realization lands soft and deep. You whisper, "Then I was here," even if no one knows. The mirror fades, leaving only the shimmer of empty light. You take one last breath in the archive, feeling its vastness accept you, not as a record, but as a rhythm, a temporary note in a larger song. You close your eyes and think about the 10 thought experiments that brought you here. The identity fragments, the infinite loops, the empathy floods, the copies and mirrors. Each one chipped away at the illusion of permanence until what remains is simple, gentle truth. Existence isn't about being remembered. It's about the quiet miracle of being, even briefly. You step out of the archive into a night that feels endless and kind. The stars overhead shimmer like data points in a cosmic memory bank, too vast to erase. You let that sight fill you with calm. And as you drift towards sleep, you realize, maybe oblivion isn't something to fear. Maybe it's just the universe's way of tidying up, making room for new light, new lives, new stories. You were part of the pattern once, that's enough. And now, as the echoes of these thoughts fade into the hush of night, let your mind loosen its grip on meaning. Breathe slowly, feeling the world around you soften at the edges. Every idea, every question, every whisper of uncertainty, all of it belongs to the gentle rhythm of existence itself. You've wandered through identity, time, and memory, and you've come home to stillness. The stars outside your window don't remember your name, but they shine for you anyway. So rest easy, traveler. You've thought enough for one lifetime. Sweet dreams.